Okay, so again, I'm Julie Palkowski. I am an arts ed consultant, and I'm here with my co-host.
Hi, I'm
So,
Sue Lazel, Adaptive Arts Specialist, and so glad to be here tonight working with all of you folks looking to share and collaborate on adaptive art strategies for our students with disabilities. So we're so happy that you're here this evening.
this is the adaptive arts session. There's a series of 4 sessions. If you missed the first one in September, that recording is available, and I'll make sure you have a follow-up email, which will give you the direct link to it. But if you want to find it sooner, it's on the Wisconsin Art Education Association webpage.
Well, tonight's agenda, we are looking at a welcome with a really cool project called Arts My Jam that Julie will take us through. We'll talk a bit about the logistics of the sessions and looking at what's brought us together tonight is looking at building relationships through Universal Design for Learning, short for UDL, and then looking at other opportunities to collaborate together.
They do what's called Arts My Jam. This particular game has several arts images. This is educational purposes only. The music that's accompanying it is royalty free. So this is something you could actually use with children, adults, your choice. But we'll see if you can have some fun. So this is one way for us to dive into UDL with an engagement piece. So we hope you enjoy making some choices in how you want to engage with the pictures. So here we go. Let's get this rolling. This particular warm up is just something that takes a mashup of art and music together. And really, it's kind of an example of what you can use in engagement piece for choice voice with students, all ages, all ability levels. It gives them a choice to look at an image, kind of freeze with that image, and just enjoy themselves. So that's going to be on the Padlet that you can definitely use if you wish. In the request for session 2, participants from the last session said they really wanted a little more information about student devices in music and art. And so 2 things that I thought were very accessible and free online applications. One is Chrome Music Lab, and this is just a quick visual of it. But Chrome Music Lab takes musical concepts and iconic notation and allows students of all ability levels to really construct their own musical lines and phrases using different sounds and instruments. So this is just one example of something that might be user-friendly for students of all ages and ability levels. Another one similar to that idea with iconic notation and just using music to visualize it is called Groove Pizza. And I'll make sure that those 2 applications, they're free, like I said, are available through the Padlet. I'll hand it over to Sue to talk a little bit about a way to utilize art and literature.
Yeah, I've been exploring that a little bit. And, in part of the Universal Design for Learning, one of the tenets, concepts is looking at representation and how we provide information to the students as we are explaining the materials we're using, going to be looking at the concepts we're going to deal with, and ultimately what they're going to be creating. And so I found a really cool book called First Forest by John Giles, and it has got a lot of really neat imagery in it. And as I was going through it, I was considering, okay, how can I help students that, based on what you were looking for in your requests about visual impairments and other challenges, is how can I, as I'm showing the book, reading the book to them and showing the images, how can I engage students who are not able to see what I am talking about? I mean, they get the visual verbal experience of it, but not the experience of the book. And so what I had done at one of the points, there's an image of a tree. And it talks about how the tree has branches, has a trunk, and then it has the roots. And so what I did is I took a piece of cardboard and I created a three-dimensional manipulative so that as I'm talking about that, I could pass it around to the students and they could feel the branches, the trunk, the ground, and then the roots underneath. Now, with the Wisconsin Art Education Association teacher resource page on our website, if you click over to the resources tab on the far right, there is an area where you'll see the art and special education. And in that's part of the website that I've been working and developing on, putting some things up regarding some other strategies and things for kids with visual and challenges and things. But this part of the website really is a good place to look at resources that are created not only by me, but by other teachers, and just kind of supporting all this work. So I hope you find a chance to go and take a look at this stuff between our times together. In our exploration of presenting universal design for learning with you guys tonight, on the previous slide, there is a kind of a visual representation of what UDL is. It's usually kind of three different components and stuff. And so we're kind of going to explore those tonight, but I thought this was a really good visual on that. And when the session and stuff is over, if you want to go back and look at it a little bit closer, I believe it's also on the Padlet.
So our objectives, we're going to be, we did take a look at the request from the survey from the last session. Sue mentioned the three components of UDL, which we'll be looking at a little more closely as far as arts classrooms and relationships, and then building our community. So we're so excited that you guys are here. We're going to dive right into engagement. So engagement, we talked a little bit about how Arts My Jam is just a fun activity to kind of get your feet wet when it comes to engaging the students, giving them some choice and voice in how they interact and how they express themselves. Sue, you can tell us a little more about engagement with art.
Yes. Many of our students come into the arts area with preferences, with interests, with experiences. And again, getting them to engage, we kind of use some of those pre-experiences as a way, as a springboard to creating new experiences. Well, sometimes what happens is that some of the new materials that the students might be working with and stuff might not be as interesting for them. And in this image here, I've got a piece of clay that I've put in a Ziploc bag. Sometimes students who may have tactile sensitivity or sensory sensitivity don't like always touching clay. And so kind of basing the experiences of, okay, they don't necessarily mind touching maybe a Ziploc bag. So I put the clay in the bag and the students can manipulate the clay through that. Ideally, in a perfect world, what would happen is that the individuals would then go and kind of peek at it and maybe open up the bag and eventually kind of poke at it and touch it and get it, pull it out of the bag and manipulate with it. But if that doesn't happen, that's okay. They can still work with the clay within the bag, and then we can pull it out when it's done and let it dry, and they can participate like their other peers and things. And so providing different kinds of activities related to what we're doing can kind of help them stay involved. And then ultimately they can come back and work on the activity that we've provided for that day.
A common area also is just the way you greet our kids. You can have the students show a greeting in however they choose to and express themselves. They can wave, they can do a thumbs up, they can speak, they could do a high five in the air, they could do a fist bump. So just giving them opportunities to select their greeting, or even when they're leaving the classroom, giving them opportunity to express themselves in that way.
Students that but don't like to touch or don't like those other kinds of things, they can use that as a communication board and just kind of point to those as if they were doing
Exactly.
it themselves. Earlier with the representation, I had shown you the tree. Sometimes with representation, I take say I'm doing something with collage, and the students maybe don't necessarily know what I'm talking about with different kinds of materials. So in this slide, I've created a collage board where the students can go in and they can touch and feel the various kinds of materials that they might want to choose to use on their collage. If you're working with a paraprofessional or another assistant or even a peer support person, sometimes when we're working with materials, we don't want to just look at the materials as being a red square. On here, the fabric that I have on here is shiny, so I'm using art words instead of color and texture, kinds of words, so that the students can have a more a literacy component to their art making. Um, this image on the left is made with wiki sticks, which are actually sort of yarn covered with wax. And wiki sticks are often used as a design technique where the students will take them and they'll build little critters or creatures or things out of it. But what I like to do with them, there's a ton of different things. But in this image, what I did is I took them, there's about 4 of them here, kind of pushed them together and then pushed them onto a piece of paper. And the students that may have a physical challenge or a visual impairment can go in and then use a marker or a colored pencil and color in within the bumps that are created by the wiki sticks, or they can trace around them. If they were painting, they could paint within that design, or they could paint on the outside of it. And when it dries, you can either leave the wiki sticks on as part of the sensory experience of the activity, or you can take it off and then the students can reposition it and continue to add different kinds of components to their art projects.
Absolutely. So, when looking at music, I kind of gave you a movement, iconic representation. So, using symbols, visual symbols to highlight different types of movements. So, if you're using scarves or just your hand motions, doing a zigzag or doing a circular thing or scrambled, something that can go and enhance the music that you're listening to. Another idea for language or symbols or iconic notation was what we used when we were looking at the Chrome Music Lab application had multiple ways of visualizing the music using color and symbols and long squares for long sounds versus short squares for shorter sounds. So those were just different ways to represent music, time, pitch, all of that.
Okay, I'm just, excited to see how much overlap there is between art and music. Some of the programs, the different things that we can do that kind of cross over, because some students might be better in one or the other. And if that comfortability kind of brings it both together, having music, activities and things in the art room and the art with the music can really be something that really it helps the students stay engaged and provides kind of an opportunity to have our students work more independently because they're excited by what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. So looking at the last one, we have action and expression. So again, we had greetings. That's another way that our learners can express themselves and communicate in a variety of ways. And Sue, what else can we do with the arts, with action and expression besides communication boards?
Well, action and expression is a lot about how the students are getting out what they are wanting to create, and be it through music or through art. On this slide, there's a VOCA, a voice output device, where the students can, play a song if perchance, maybe they are unable to sing, or particularly that day they don't want to sing, but something could be pre-programmed into that, and they can engage with the group that way. In the art images here, I've got an individual who's using wire as part of designing his art project. The art project was actually doing line drawings with different kinds of materials. They were going to either use crayons and colored pencils, and the student has had a visual impairment and really wasn't connecting with that. So we brought out different kinds of wires, and some were wire coated, some were like chenille bumps and stuff, and they created a visual drawn image in wire. The other image looks at something we sort of talked about last week with the milk carton grips, and this is driving the car through paint. And in this way, the student is able to paint who might not want to or be able to hold on to a traditional drawing tool. So using another kind of a tool to complete the same kind of activity as their peer.
Basically, our topic today was how does UDL support learning relationships? And so what we wanted to do is give you an opportunity to maybe think first about engagement. And your question is going to be, what would you do to strengthen classroom relationships through engagement? Are you ready? Now we're going to look at
Yep.
representation. What would you do to strengthen classroom relationships through representation? How do you do that? Using symbols, or what are some things that would enhance that? Well, thank you for participating in that question. You ready for the last one? Here we go. Here's the
Yes.
last question. So we're thinking about action and expression. What would you do to strengthen classroom relationships through action and expression? So stretching our thinking a little bit with universal design for learning.
You can ask the students, how might you do this? What would be a good material? But, do you want to draw or do you want to paint? And an offering, like having, like one of the tenets of universal design for learning is that you would have all your adaptive tools and all your supports and stuff, be it, different grips for your musical instruments, or you're going to have grips for your art supplies and stuff. You'd have them available for all of your kids. So you'd have a table. And so if you've got little buckets of materials, well, incorporate a couple adaptive scissors and grips and alternative supplies. So it becomes a natural part of your art making process. And I just call them cool tools. I don't call them adaptive.
Well, thank you all for participating in the 3 questions. We've got just one 1-minute video we wanted to show you, and it's from a school district that is sharing how they lift up UDL in art, music, theater, and dance.
What is UDL? Universal Design for Learning is when you plan out your lessons so that all students are able to succeed in your classroom.
For example, in music, learning scales is like, which process do you utilize to learn that skill, and how does it make sense to you, not to the teacher, not to your colleagues. It's how does it make sense to you, because ultimately you're going to own that knowledge.
The intent of UDL is people of all variabilities, all learning styles, and all skill levels are better able to learn in the classroom.
I think as a seasoned teacher, we're just always changing. We have to always be changing with kind of the times and with students. Kids are different now than when I started teaching 27 years ago. For me, in kind of opening up my eyes to how can I reach more students, I feel like the UDL kind of methods have really opened my eyes. I may have been effective as a teacher for the last 26 years, but how am I going to get through the next 10 years? Many people don't.
In the Padlet under UDL, we put some resources in there, and I had found some other videos that are good of art teachers and music teachers utilizing UDL in their classrooms. So I'd encourage you between this week and the next time we get together to go look at some of those ones where UDL is really infused through our arts areas.
Thank you for joining us for the Adaptive Arts sessions. We look forward to seeing you at the future sessions that we have planned or listening to the recording. You may contact Sue or I at our email address. Thanks again.